everybody, and welcome back to my modeling channel. So today I'm going to rescue another of my kit who didn't leave very well the relocation. It's going to be an Airbus A310 from Revell. It's quite a rare kit, so that's why I decided to rescue that aircraft. So for this, basically you can see that during the relocation the fuselage has been almost completely open and crashed. So I will have a lot of work on those parts. I'll have to refix basically the cockpit and the cockpit window. The tail, the horizontal stabilizer has been detached as well. Some part of the engine have been falling as well, and the undercarriage has been separated. So that's not a huge deal. I'm going to rework those and I will be able to add maybe some more detail later on. I will use for that aircraft, I will still keep an African airline in the loop. This time I will use G-boat decals, and I will make the A320 from Air Djibouti. So for those who are aware of the difference on the A310, those are the engines provided in the kit. I think those are the CF56 or CF56, and that aircraft for Air Djibouti was fit with the Sata A310 4000 engine. So I found some aftermarket parts made by Braz Decal, or was it Braz Resin. Basically the engine is molded in two separated parts, and they are in resin. So I will have to do some adjustments on those engines. I will glue them together and paint out and add some more details to my aircraft. Of course, I will have to scrap all the paint and try to rebuild everything at a good standard. So I hope you're gonna enjoy that with me, and let's start building. I will start that renovation by preparing my new engines, and for this I have to remove the extra resin located on both ends of those resin engines. Once this was done, I removed the wings and the fuselage. I separated both parts of the fuselage basically to be able to restore everything. So initially what I did after that, I removed the windows, who were made out of basically white glue, and after that I was using a sharp pencil to redraw all the panel lines that I will rescribe, because while you will be sanding down everything, all the pylon lines will disappear on the model and it will be very difficult. So for that, initially I will rescribe all the panel lines, and then I will be able to sand down all the decals and the remaining paints on the fuselage and the wing themselves. It's now time for that long process of rejuvenating our fuselage. So I use some basic sandpaper to remove all the paint and the decals on the fuselage and on the model itself. After that, I decided to get my engines ready for assembly, and for that I had to use a file to get them at the proper shape to be able to glue them together without having a pretty big gap. So for gluing these, I use some super glue, and that does the trick. And of course, after that, as you can see, the gaps are pretty big, so you have to put quite a little bit of putty to be able to have a proper surface. So while the putty was drying, I had time to remove the remaining windows on the fuselage, and then I rescribed some more panel also on the model, and also on the horizontal stabilizer. Shortly after that, I decided to fill up the windows. So for this, I used some regular Revell glue, and after that what I did was assembling all the fuselage together before gluing, and to be able to match the panel lines together. So that allowed me, once the fuselage would be glued together, to be able to have the proper matching panel lines. After that, I put some Tamiya putty in the window to fill up the windows, let it dry of course, and after that I had to glue all the fuselage together and to make the final assembly. After the putty has dried, it's time now to sand down all that putty and to see if there is still some gaps remaining. After finishing the last correction on the filling and sanding down of the fuselage and the wings, it's time to go for the final assembly of the model. So of course gluing the wings to the fuselage itself, and of course again we have to do some filling with some Tamiya putty on the joint of course. After finishing the model, it's time now to take the plane to the paint booth and start to paint the corrugat, basically, which is the dark gray part located on the top of and the bottom of the wing and the vertical stabilizer. Then I start to paint inside the engines as well, with basically the fan cone, and after that there is normally a small line on that aircraft between the fan and the inside of the engine itself. It's a burgundy color, so I did all the mixed together, and then I had to paint it of course along the engines, and of course after that I decided to protect it and to paint the rest of the engine itself. So now it's time to paint a light gray color on our wings basically, and the engine pylons themselves. Shortly after that, once the painter will be dried, I will have to add some protection to this of course, and I will use some metallic paint to paint the leading edge of the wings and the engine as well. paint has dried out now, so it's time to remove all the masking tape and to see how the paint job did really happen. Now I'm gonna start to use those G-boot decal for air Djibouti, and as you could probably see, the decal were extremely fragile. They already broke in many parts, and the front break immediately. Then I tried to use, and I have quite a bit of experience on being able to manage those destroyed decals, but this time it went really over the top. And after trying for 10 minutes, I tried to apply another part of that decal, and unfortunately it broke in so many pieces that it was just unusable at the end. So I had to remove them, and I decided to go for another livery that you will see a little bit later. So I had to cover up the back of the aircraft, repaint everything, the tail in white this time, and I will use a Portuguese Azores basically livery from the company called Sata. So you will see now, I will apply those decals, and they were provided by 2.6 decals, and I have to say they were very thin but easy to work with, and if you have the proper set and a little bit of patience, everything will gonna go very smoothly, and you will see the result later on.